Oh, okay. Hey, can you hear me? I don't think she can hear me.
Hello?
Oh,
Oh,
hear me?
yes. I totally forgot I muted my computer earlier today. I'm like, what is happening? I can't.
Okay, good.
I tested everything.
That's the worst. No worries. We are all
Mini
good now.
stress. I'm like, what the hell? Everything's been fine.
Oh, yeah, the mute button.
Yes, on the laptop.
Yes.
Oh, well.
Well, welcome to the show. It's nice to meet you.
Thanks. It's nice to meet you. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. How are you? How's life?
I'm good. It's good. It's exciting. There's a lot of kids and grandbabies and it's the holidays time, so it's just kind of getting to be a bit exciting and fun.
Aw, you have a lot of grandbabies?
Well, I have one and another on the way.
You do not look old enough to have grandbabies. That's amazing.
She's one. She's cool.
Aw, and another on the way? That's awesome.
Yeah, that one's a secret still, but it's okay.
How many kids do you have?
5.
Oh, wow. Oh, so you have high probability of grandbabies.
I'm gonna have a whole football team before I die.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Parts of me wish I had 5 kids. I really do. I love being a mom.
Yeah, it's fun. It's one of those that I mean, I've been a mom now 28 years and I still have 11-year-old twins at home. So and now grandchildren. So it's like I'm just forever gonna be here in this space.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Yep. 11-year-old twins. How's that?
It's
Wait, girls or boys?
girls.
Oh,
Yeah.
those
It,
tweens are rough.
yes.
I can't imagine having 2.
My oldest daughter was so good that she's 28. So that's my, and then I have 2 boys. So my oldest was just such a good teenager. If the 11-year-olds, sometimes I'll call the big kids and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, what would
Yeah.
you do? Like,
Yeah.
because I don't know the drama. I'm just not that. I mean, I find my women tribe and I just tend to stick with them.
Yep.
Because I mean,
Yeah.
some women aren't very kind, and these kids, but it's fun. I do the workshops with them now, and I'm loving that. So we'll just make them all beautiful and fantastic.
So you do the workshops with your kids?
Yeah, I do them for kids as well. Some of the
Oh,
work.
wow.
The twins and I wrote a book, so it'll be published first quarter this coming year. It's to bring awareness to 988. We used 988 as the catapult to bring awareness for parents, a resource for parents to be able to have that conversation with their kids.
What's
So,
988? Sorry.
oh,
Tell me.
in July, all phone carriers, the U.S. or all around the U.S. passed 988 is the mental health suicide crisis line.
Okay.
Just like 911 for physical emergency. This is mental.
Oh, I
You
did
can
not know that.
you can call it. It gets you right into the crisis hotline. And that's so with that coming out, it was a perfect time because I always had parents ask me, how do I talk to my kid? And I'm like, 988 is the perfect way, right?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, so is it a resource for kids as well, or more like for the parent who, like you said, is wanting to talk to their child and they get educated that way?
it's a crisis hotline. So it's literally 911 for suicide or mental health breakdown. Yeah.
Wow.
So a kid, anybody that knows it, text it, call it, use it. So it's emergency for the most part in that realm. I mean, you wouldn't do it for a broken leg, but you would if you were, having a mental crisis breakdown or something, or feeling suicidal for sure.
Man, I feel like that needs to be out there more because I had no idea. And what a great resource.
Yeah. Yeah. It was 7 years in the making, trying to get it to push through, but here it is. And I'm excited because it's perfect. It's perfect. It's easy for kids.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's interesting because a couple years ago, I mean, gosh, it must have been 5 now, my son's senior year, near the beginning of the year, one of his classmates committed suicide, and it was a very small school. There's only like 50 kids in his class, so everybody was very close. And to see what these kids went through and not know how to help them or explain it or understanding. I mean, we had grief counseling full time, but I think, to have a resource like that, maybe it could have prevented some of that.
Yeah, that's unfortunate for sure. And definitely we need to get more awareness just around the subjects in general, right? Getting
Right.
kids, giving them the opportunity to talk.
Yeah. Well, and this is your specialty, so I'm curious to know because I feel like suicide has definitely gone up since the pandemic. I feel like I'm hearing about more and more deaths occurring, a lot of PTSD with soldiers, a lot of that kind of stuff. I just feel like it's escalated. Statistically, is that true?
Yeah. Um, I think overall, statistically, it's not as high as people were thinking it was. It's kind of shifted from the numbers I see and stuff. It's went down to the younger years.
Oh,
So, the amount overall isn't significant, but age. So, the CDC is really starting to track and watch the 10 to 24-year-old range is the becoming one of the highest
you
hot
said 10?
10.
Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
They're
Yeah.
just babies at that point to even be considering that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I know. I know. I also read a study where, not that they could, and mind you, these numbers are only ones they can prove because someone admitted it or it
Right.
was obvious. Kids or people can go to the hospital all day long with maybe an OD. Maybe they tried, but they're not saying that. So it wasn't tracked, right?
Yep.
The numbers they say are 4 times more, honestly, for attempts.
I would agree to that. Obviously I run a drug and alcohol rehab, and
Oh,
oftentimes when people die, I wonder, was it the fentanyl or were they doing it on purpose? And unless there's like a
yeah.
very clear no, you don't usually know. And then it's like, it could be posted one way or the other.
Right. And obviously, people don't want to go the suicide route. I mean, I've learned with that. I had to actually rebrand myself last year or beginning of this year, because leading with suicide prevention, people love it. They're not going to participate. It
Oh,
was really hard to get people to participate because they didn't want to be associated with that. I used to, not that it's a funny light subject, but I used to tell people I feel like a herpes commercial. I'm like,
oh my God.
but they don't want to go pick up the cream, right? They're just like,
Right.
no.
I need it, but I don't want to do it. Send your mom in.
Right. Get tampons. He's like, ah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it literally, I did classes that I had friends in, and I asked, I'm like, hey, you want to give a testimonial? Not with my name. I'm like, what? Nobody. I mean, you should feel proud that you are now certified to recognize that
Yeah.
and that you have that knowledge. I was just perplexed, but that's fine. I'll rebrand. We'll rework it. So then the book we wrote, Hannah, Abby, and I, does not mention suicide in the book.
Okay.
It just brings awareness to 988 and what you could use it for, like mental crisis. And of course, we break that down a little by using the example of one of the characters in the book being very sad and depressed when he used to be happy and amazing because his grandfather passed away and his brother
Mm.
went into the Navy and just life changed. And now he's just in that depressed mode. So we just kind of went on that little realm. It's a
Yeah.
tiny piece, but at least it brings that number to awareness.
And is it written towards kids, for kids?
Yeah. Yeah, we
Okay.
use the characters are animals. my,
Nice.
my daughters. And yeah, it's in a school setting. So we have like they're in the hallway talking, locker room, so it is, but it's a great resource for the parents to, bring that book home.
Oh,
And
good.
I believe we should start talking 8, 9-year-olds for sure.
Right. Yeah, interesting you mentioned that. I think the same goes for, like, we talked about fentanyl. I had a friend reach out to me like, "Hey, do you guys have any information on what's happening with that? Because I literally can't find anything online. I have no resources. There's no statistics, there's no courses, there's nothing I could bring into the school
Yeah.
environment to educate these kids." Kind of like that. It's almost taboo. Like, no, if we don't talk about it, it's not real, but it needs to be talked about and kids need to know because it is hitting as young as that, where if you're not talking about it, that's where this stuff happens.
Right. Yeah. I think oddly enough, I I wouldn't even know what fentanyl looks like. I know.
Oh, it's
And that's
unfortunate. It comes in anything. It now looks like
why.
Skittles. Your kids could be thinking they're taking a handful of Skittles. Like they've insidiously put it in things. You don't even know you're doing it. They make it look like candy. Like it is in so many different forms. Kids don't think they're taking fentanyl. They think they're having a, Molly and we're going to have
Oh,
ecstasy fun and they're
yeah.
dying and it's because there's zero education out there about it.
Oh my gosh, yeah, see, my fault, I should get on that train. My kids are 11 now, right? And I hear about it a lot. My youngest son's a police officer.
Oh,
It's there's a name for it in the out in the streets. It's used as currency.
yeah.
I forgot what they call it. Like white money or something. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? What is that? I
Yeah.
mean, so I mean, I guess as parents, we're all kind of in a space, and I focus a lot on the mental health and this and that. Sometimes I forget about there's still that out there, the drugs and stuff.
Yeah, well, and it's worse and different than we were growing up because I know when I was growing up, if you overdosed, that meant you either did a lot or you were like shooting heroin. Like
Oh my gosh.
overdoses didn't happen from just casual like smoking weed, whereas now they're with them slipping it into everything, making it and a lot of these overdoses are happening in the schools with the kids, making it so accessible, making it appealing. That's where we're seeing a lot of overdoses. And again, they're providing Narcan in schools because teachers are like, oh my God, this kid is like overdosing in my classroom. Yeah. So
Horrible.
absolutely, you should be having those conversations. And just like with mental health, it's earlier than you think you need to be
Mhm.
having those conversations.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the girls are sixth grade. I agree. It's
Yeah.
definitely time.
Okay. So tell me, yeah, we've already sort of segue into what you do and why do you do it?
Well, let's start with a little of the why. That would segue us into what I do now. I always dabbled in mental performance coaching and kind of being up on that because my boys were so involved in sports through high school. Well, since they were tiny, but they did it all the way through high school, tackle football. And then my oldest son, he's 25 now, went into the military in 2017. I got onto some of the mom groups, Facebook. You know how we do. We're like, oh, I'm going to find out what's happening. And
Yeah.
I was blown away by the amount of young kids in the military trying to take their lives or
Yeah.
taking their lives. I was like, wow. I looked at my husband. I said, I'm not worried about my son going to war. I'm worried about my son's head going to war.
Yeah.
So whole different mommying kicked in. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get trained. I'm gonna be ready. I need to recognize this. I also knew my youngest son was on the path to being a police officer once he graduated college. So
Yeah.
I said, the boys are in very high risk jobs. So I got trained for myself, and then I loved it. I was like, well, this isn't enough. I want to teach it. So I got trained to teach and certified in that aspect. And then more things just started happening. Someone in our family had attempted, thankfully, nothing tragic came of it, but obviously the aftermath of learning and stuff. Also, my daughter, younger then, of course, asked me what suicide was. I didn't think at that age she would know yet, but
Wow.
her friends, older brother, 15 at the time, tried. So she's like, Mommy, what is that? So and so's brother tried. I'm like, oh my God, this is so close to home. So I just kept pushing forward with trying to bring awareness. My initial focus was military and police because there's not much training in that aspect. I think the military, they do like one quick online class a year. They just teach them that. That's it. My son's like, I do it just to get through it. I don't remember when I'm done. So I thought that was awful.
Yeah.
Segueing further into what I do, I wanted to get deeper. I'm like, I realized my own how serious my struggles with suicidal ideation became. I struggled for over 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't think it was serious because I never really had a plan. So once I started learning more about ideation and stuff, I'm like, whoa, that's like, I'm in a really dangerous spot right now, very dangerous spot, because I would keep it as an option in my pocket. I never had an actual plan, but it was always there. It's like, well, you know what? I'm going to make sure that my, afterlife is planned perfectly. My estate was in impeccable order. I wrote letters to my kids all the time. I'd update the letters depending on where they were at in life and what maybe milestone would happen. It's like, okay, if I were to die today, Hannah and Abby are going to be turning 10 or 12, or, Mercedes is going to be 16, whatever I wanted. Here's a gift I want them to have. I would write it for my executor. And here's a letter I want them to get on X birthday or this. And I just
Wow.
learned, obviously. I know, right? And my
Wow.
husband's like, okay, so that's great estate planning. You're really thorough. He had no idea.
Right? I'm thinking that is 100% opposite of me, who like, I don't even think I have a will. I'm like, what am I doing?
Right? I made sure I had like really good life insurance. I thought that I continued to have certain thoughts. I was a young mom. I was 20 when I had my first. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I mean,
Yeah.
if I look
And
back,
nobody knew what postpartum depression was back then. Like,
no,
none
no.
of that.
I pushed
Yeah.
my kid in the corner and I cried for 3 days after I had her.
Yeah.
I tell her this, but I thought she was so ugly. She looked like a little alien. She
Oh
was
my God.
well, you're 20, you're vain. You're like, my baby's not pretty.
You're not beautiful like all those baby photos. What is it?
She had this flaming orange hair. I'm like, what is that? Like, who has orange hair? She's beautiful now. I mean, of course, she's this beautiful redhead, and she's very, of course, she's mine, but she is beautiful. But yeah, I didn't know, and I didn't know all of the struggles and stuff. And what I can say is that I am fortunate in the fact that, not that we purposefully did it, but because we had young kids, there were no weapons readily available. I can say, if I were to have done it, it would have been driving off of a cliff or a gun. I never had any other thought. It wouldn't have been pills or anything. So with that, I was very grateful that it's like we didn't have a gun in the drawer. If I needed to get to one of our guns, it'd be like, go to the basement, find the clip, then find the ammo. After 11 seconds, someone's thought to commit suicide diminishes like 60%.
Is that true? That's a statistic?
Yeah, if you can put a distance in there, that's why reducing lethal means is very important when someone's going through something tragic or, extra emotional and stuff. Someone loses a big job, things like that. It's very good idea to wrap that up, hide, get rid of the meds if you can, lock them up, things like that. Same with older, our families, our older parents that go into like nursing homes and stuff. Start, if you feel like they're feeling lonely and stuff, lock up the meds, because that's a number one way they'll try. But I didn't, obviously I didn't have the access right away, because there were probably some times I was very feeling like I was such a piece of crap, or, just things weren't right. I was not doing the right thing. And it's like, oh, I'll just end it now. My estate's so impeccable. The kids will be like, God, mom's amazing. Look at this. We don't have to do anything. She left us this, left us that. Of course, I know now, I'm definitely more valuable as a stumbling fool alive than an impeccable estate with some good life insurance, right? So, but, once I talked about it, once I got it out, it was a wild difference. And one of the main things that triggered me on, hey, lose this as an option, even though I was already a few years in the suicide prevention and stuff, I was like, not really wanting to recognize it. You know how we get with things. But when I was told I was going to be a grandma, there was absolutely no way, when I sat and thought about it, there was not a single letter I could write my daughter or any of my kids once they become a parent. There was no advice I could leave behind. So I was like, we got to get rid of that identity. It's not a thing. It can't be part of me anymore. And it really was a wild breakdown. It was awful. I never cried so much. You would have thought somebody died. I literally had to just release that part of my safety net, if you will. Terrible thing to say about it, but that's how I felt.
Yeah, it's like the backup plan that you don't ever want to use, but if you need to, there it is.
Absolutely. And I feel amazing now. Amazing. And I talk about it freely. The kids know. The littles, I did talk to the littles. They're not old enough to comprehend what that means. And I don't want them to worry about me. But the big kids, we've had the conversation. They've seen my talks on it and stuff. So it's good.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I definitely, as you and I are sort of joking, laughing, I don't want our viewers to think that we don't take this seriously. I
Oh,
think kind of like with me with addiction, when you've overcome it and you look back and retrospectively how you were at a certain point in your life, you kind of can't believe it yourself in disbelief, and it becomes less serious for you. Whereas
yeah.
other people are like, that's super serious. Like, why are you laughing?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. How just talking about it brings certain people to tears, even if they've never really experienced it.
Mm,
And I've noticed when I've done speaking engagements and stuff with women, I was recently, I think it was May, I was in a room with 170 some women, and I promise you probably 50, 60% of them knew exactly what I was saying, and they had felt it if not tried it. I had at least 15 of them come talk to me about their own personal, and those are just the ones willing to share. It's a
right.
lot. I had a group this weekend. There was 8 of us in the group. 6 of us had dabbled with it or tried it. It's insane.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's a larger propensity for men or women that successfully do it?
Well, statistically,
Right.
men are more successful.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yep. Women, though, if you take the man totals, women are they attempt it 4 times more than actually the men die. The reason is because of the means that they choose.
Mm,
Men are, you can assume,
yeah.
because if you use a weapon, you're 56% likely it's happening. Like you can't change your mind.
Yeah.
Jump in and gun. Women don't usually pick that route. So
Right.
that's the reason for that.
Same with when they're trying to kill people. Women just have a, not that I would know this at all, but I watch a lot of crime shows and I know women more passively will also try to kill somebody. So it makes sense to me that they would do that on themselves as well.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, you do see where they're like poison over time.
Yes, 100%. Whereas a guy's just gonna
What's
like,
wrong with that? Like, what is wrong with us?
I don't know. It's like we want to do it, but we're gonna think about it, but we're gonna keep going forward with it.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's something to do with our estrogen. I'm sure.
who knows? Yeah, crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So do you have a course or is this like just seminars that you do or is it a support group? What do you do with this knowledge?
Well, if somebody wants to be certified to where they're technically get, a little certification, it's called QPR. Dr. Quinnett out of Washington came up with it. He's a psychologist and he really just studies suicide. And he created it with a whole bunch of other people. It's been accredited and all of that. So it's about, they call it the gatekeeper training, which is the basic
Mm,
initial training. It's about a 45-minute. When I do them, I'll throw in another 15 minutes because I always do reducing lethal means with it. So you can get certified. Basically, what that means is you then have been given all of the tools to recognize, basically question, persuade them to get some help, and how to get them the help. Because
mm,
how you ask the question matters. Now, when I say that, though, we definitely would rather somebody ask the question versus not ask the question because they're afraid of asking it wrong.
sure.
But there is a wrong way to ask. If I felt like you were suicidal, I wouldn't want to say, "Oh, you're not thinking of killing yourself, are you?" Because then you're like, "Oh, no, absolutely not." It's
Right.
a very judgy. You wouldn't want to say, "Oh, suicide's a stupid idea. You're not thinking of that." Because you don't want to lead them to give you a no answer. Because when
Mm.
you say it like that, you're kind of begging for a please say no.
Sure. And it's just super evaluative. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, same goes with treatment and everything. Like when you hit people in the wrong way, it's just gonna make things worse, not better.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Best way to ask is just ask. Are you
Yeah.
thinking of killing yourself? That's it. I
Yeah.
mean, it's hard. I get it. And if you can't, find somebody who can. Hell,
Right.
text me. I'll do it. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, call 988. Ask
988.
them to help you. So it's just really, it teaches you that. It teaches you where to find resources, what resources. It teaches you about myths. I know a lot of people are afraid, thinking, oh my gosh, if I even mention it, it's going to give my kid the idea. No, it won't. That has never
Mm,
been proven. If they're thinking about it, they're thinking about it. If they're not, they're not. You're not going to plant the seed. So the
mm,
course is really just teaching myths, kind of, busting those so people can get that out of their mind. And it's quite simple, but yet powerful.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's like you mentioned in the beginning, there's just like, and I would never have considered that there's this taboo around it. Like,
Mhm.
why? This is not something that we should be afraid to talk about. But like you said, maybe it's more like if I talk about it, it makes it real and then it'll happen. And if I just ignore it, it'll go away.
Well, think about the person that's asking what kind of, they have to then decide what kind of answer is coming their way and what they can handle.
Right.
So I can remember I'm thinking, well, geez, of course, back then I would have thought, what? I was not wanting to talk to my sons about sex. I'm like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. What if they ask me something I don't know the answer to?
I know the answer. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, no. So I can
Yeah.
imagine having to ask something like that,
Right.
especially if you don't know what to say. And the best thing when you do ask, just listen. Because
Mm.
once you ask, they're just gonna, you probably know this with your center and your work. They just want to talk. Just listen. No, you don't have to fix it. You don't have to give a bunch of advice. Don't do anything. Just be there, be present, and listen.
1000%. You don't need to judge. You don't need to
Mhm.
evaluate what you're hearing. You just need to listen. And so few people, and I mean, this could even just be your grocery clerk. So few people feel heard that
Mhm.
when you actually just listen, it's amazing what they'll tell you and what they'll unburden themselves with.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But again, you have to be in that headspace to be able to accept that answer.
Yeah.
So again, if you can't ask the question, or you don't think you can be there for them, don't leave them. I mean, definitely, if you feel like it's a bad situation, get some help right then. Bring somebody else in.
Yep. And I think that's the biggest thing is if you're confronted with something, there's somebody excuse me. There's somebody you can reach to if you are stuck in that spot. And believe me, I've even been in that spot. I'm like, oh shoot, this person really needs help. Maybe not, suicide, but with different drug or alcohol scenarios. And I'm like, but let me call my guy who I know is an expert in this, or let me call my girl who's, really trained in sexual abuse or trauma. Like I will refer to the person that I know that's going to best help them as opposed to giving some advice that might not be the best for them.
Right. Yeah. If we could just remember, and I was really reminded of this. Just hold space. Recently, I mentored a girl at Cal Poly. It was a beta program, so we're starting the full launch next first of the year. And so we did this beta with some of the students, and I was just like, "Oh my god, what do I do with this information?"
Yeah.
And my psychology friend reminded me, she's like, "You're not supposed to do anything with it, Susie. You just hold space. You
Mhm.
guide when needed. You give advice when you see fit. Don't just try. Don't think you have to interject. Don't think you have to fix it." I was like, "Oh my god, you're right." Like, so I mean, mentoring, asking questions, counseling, a lot of that's just the same. It's holding that space for somebody to just unload.
I love that. I just as you're hearing that, I wonder it must be harder for men because men like want to fix everything. Like when you have a problem, they I don't want to hear it. I just want to fix it and be done with
Mhm.
it. I wonder if it's harder for men to just hear it without trying to fix
Yeah,
it.
I would think so. For me, I noticed it was a little bit of a challenge because I instantly went into mom mode
Yeah.
with this girl. She's a third year college. So my kid's age, I'm like, oh, I'm coming,
Yeah.
like, what am I
Yeah.
going to do? Right.
Yeah.
So it's just remembering those sorts of things that we're just here to offer that little bit of space for people.
Yeah. I love that. And a lot of times it really is just shutting up.
Right.
It's
Hmm.
not like, "What am I gonna say next?" It's just listening, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of people get hung up on the, "What's my next question?" or "What this?" or "How should I counter that?" instead of just letting the space be, where sometimes even more stuff will come out if you just give them and sometimes it's uncomfortable,
Hmm.
the space, like you said.
Yeah. And, if you do have something to say, you can ask them, just say, hey, do you just want me to listen or would you like my advice? You can
Mhm.
always preface help in that realm. That way you don't overstep or you don't not give when they wanted that.
Oh, that's a good advice right there
Yeah.
for
Just
sure.
ask permission. What do you need from me? I'm here for you. What do you need?
Mm, and they should tell you.
Mhm. Yeah, I learned that from actually one of my podcasts. I had a girl come on. She said her friend started a business. It's like phone a friend or something like that. It's more than a friend, but not a therapist kind of a thing. You can
Okay.
call, and she basically, the gist is, do you want me to listen? Do you want advice? And you choose. And then she does that. And it's like $30 for 20 minutes or something.
Oh, wow.
I know, right?
That's so smart.
Logical.
So smart. Nope. Just listen and don't say a word. Okay.
Thanks, bye.
Wow. Dude, I got to start trying that one.
I know. But think about it. Us as women, when we unload, even if
Yeah.
you write a letter to that person, you're like, huh, I feel great.
Yeah.
And then you burn the letter. You're like,
100%. Well, and I feel like that's a mistake we as women make with our husbands. We just want to like blah. And then it's hard for them just to hold space and go, damn, okay, I get it. That sucks. They're like, now I got to fix this. And it's like, no, I just want to unload. Like, I'm good now.
yeah, my husband will go, so I think I heard 4 problems. Which one do you want me to tackle? I'm like, nothing. I'm just talking. I'm just venting. He's like, oh.
Yeah.
Can you clarify that when we have a chat next time?
Yeah. Well, and I learned that. That's when one of my friends was like, that's not what husbands are for, men are for. That's what your girlfriends are for. Because we can just listen and go, damn, dude, that sucks. And that's it. And we don't have to do more than that. We can just listen and it's cool.
For sure.
Yeah. I think it would be great for any of our listeners or anybody to take that course just so, I mean, it's 45 minutes. You get the awareness, the understanding, you can see the signs, you know how to talk if any of these situations occur. It just seems like something everybody should have or do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was doing I do them via Zoom. I used to do one free per month. I don't have any on the schedule until the first of next year. I'll reopen. But they can find that on my awareandcareproject.com. So I'll reopen the schedule for just once a month. Opening
Awesome.
them. It's
Yeah,
free.
I mean, even I, as much as I am in this realm, would love additional knowledge, training, understanding, that sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's important. It really is. It's an amazing 45 minutes. And then I do it live. So it's not like you're just watching a webinar. You're with me, ask questions. What do you need? I don't want anyone to go away. Well, technically with my school license, I can't do webinar style. We need to be there because it can be a triggering lesson for some. So I need to be there to be able to help them through that if that's what they need.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but I've seen, or maybe I just know more of, and probably a lot of this has to do with CrossFit because, we honor people who've fallen and do workouts for them. But it definitely seems like there's a lot of the reason you got into this with the military is a lot of men coming back with PTSD, families, all of it doesn't seem to matter. They still choose that route. Psychologically, do you think there's a common thread?
I do. And that's where I felt the training at that level of just teaching the suicide prevention recognition was not enough. That's why I went and got master certified in neuro-linguistic programming, hypnotherapy, time techniques, EFT, and I just recently got certified in sound meditation, sound bath. So now I'm incorporating hypnotherapy with the sound bath session because I feel like for me, it was needing to learn these other modalities because in order to stop suicidal ideation, we always have like an ideation kind of before we do it. Unless it's, acute crisis, that's just different. And that can come anytime, depending on something bad, traumatic happening. Right. But I feel like we have to get to the root. You have to get to the root. Most of the time, a lot of these issues, depression, stress, even drug addiction, things like that, all most likely, I mean, I'm not a doctor, but let's be real. Most stuff probably is stemming from some traumas as a kid or this or
same
that.
with
Right?
addiction. Yes.
A perfect child, well, there aren't any, but let's just say, I don't know very many kids that haven't had a lot of trauma that besides possibly just being rebellious, getting into drugs and stuff, right? And they probably were rebellious because their perfect life, their parent wasn't paying attention to them. I mean, I'm just going to go with that experience-wise.
Yeah. Well, and I could say everybody I've put through my program, there's always trauma.
Right. Right. So if we can find ways, teach people modalities, like for me, I'll just go why I do it for me. My boys, I envision, not that it's a happy thing, but it's just straight reality. I have visions of one day if my son goes to war, he's going to be, my son is a corpsman for the Marines. He will be in the field. So he'll be out there. If something happens and they have to go fight, my child will be sitting out there, right? So I just imagine on occasion, what if my son's sitting in this foxhole like you see in the movies? Or my younger son, who's a police officer, he has to go up to some accident scene and there's child death, or he has to pull out a drowned baby from a
Yeah.
pool here in Phoenix. What can my son do when he gets back to his patrol car before he moves on? There are so many mild modalities, breath work, tapping, quick meditations, quick repetitive things. There's so many little things you can teach people that at the moment can help reduce how that trauma sits in you
Mhm.
and embeds itself into you, because we know that there are tests now where trauma is passed down through DNA. So if I can do any little thing to help reduce that moment of trauma till my son can get the other help that's needed or do the other things needed, that's what needs to happen. And so these things need to be out there for everybody. They have to
Yeah.
learn them.
Yeah.
They're just coping skills that are so important now.
Do you think men are less likely, especially in these fields where you have to be strong, show no weakness, you have to be the pillar of strength? Do you think men are less likely to reach for help because they feel they have to be the strong one?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, that's a proven statistic. Things are changing, fortunately. I know the police departments here have implemented psychologists and stuff on site all the time now, which is having a good turnout.
Mm,
But military and stuff, even think of guys in high profile positions, how they feel they might be viewed or treated,
right.
because it's not that normal yet, but it's getting better. It is getting better. I know that the Navy SEALs, they use square breathing. That's fantastic. So, I mean, that's good.
Yeah.
That's all I know the military uses right now.
Yeah.
It's interesting that only the, elite in there that are under high stress are doing it, because I'm sorry, the kids down working the nukes under the ships that never, or the submarines that never come out and see light for 6 months.
Yeah.
I think they need some stuff. And
Yeah.
our military, along with, I'll just call them out, the police academy that I know of, they don't do any. They don't do in the academy. My son went through 6 months. There was no mental resilience training. There was no emotional awareness or anything like that. They didn't have any of that. My son didn't even have suicide recognition, not even a 1 hour webinar he didn't have. Same
Yeah.
with my son that entered the military and those that enter now. There's zero of that. And I think that's wrong. And
Yeah.
I mean, my goal would be to change that. They need a program.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully going forward, when they start looking statistically and how do we keep these people around and how do we prevent these tragedies from occurring, they make it more mainstream to have this available or as part of their training, as opposed to it being like taboo, like quit being a little pussy, like
Mhm,
be a man, which is like, like my generation, how men were raised. That was the
mhm.
norm. Shoot, even I was raised that way. Like you just
Yeah,
be tough and deal with it. And that is how you get through it. So
right.
hopefully, like you said, in today's times, we start to realize that we need a little more than that.
Yeah, I think it's going to take quite a few generations, because if we think
Yeah.
about back, you know, my dad or even my generation, I don't know how old you are. I'm 48. So my
I'm the same
generation.
age
Okay.
ish.
So,
I'm a little older than you.
born in the 70s, our
Yes.
dad, I remember, boy, girl, my brother, it's like, suck it up, buttercup, stop
Yep.
crying.
Yep.
So now, and that didn't even change till, I mean, I don't think I ever told my boys don't cry. I was a coddling mom. I'm like, well, baby.
Same.
But that's, changing more and more, faster and faster. So it's just going to take that much time to catch up. So the 10-year-olds today are going to be far better off than our 70s babies, right? As far as
Yes, but do you think it could be taken too far where we coddle the
Mhm.
the emotional part of them where now it's just an excuse for everything because of the trauma and what I'm feeling and my emotions. Do
Mhm.
you feel like the pendulum might be going a little too far that direction?
I do. And I feel like the word trauma is way overused.
Yeah,
When I think of my childhood trauma, it's my mom near murdered and a guy being murdered in my house when I'm 5. That's my trauma. My trauma is not a hot coffee that's spilt on my lap. That's
right.
not trauma. So I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's wildly overused when people are like, "Oh my god, my child was yelled at today by his teacher and he's so traumatized." No, he's not. He's not really. I mean, he might be mad or sad, but I wouldn't call that trauma.
Yes, exactly. Well, and I think that's the thing is we've got to start differentiating what
Mhm.
is true trauma and what is just emotions because something sucked.
Right.
And that's what concerns me with the more of this, not
Excessive.
concerns, but when I think about more of this being introduced to help our people that are out there, does it then push things so far the other way where, everybody just wants to live in their emotions and
Mhm.
not, um, be strong enough to handle situations. They're so weakened because they're allowed to be so emotional that they're not strong enough to handle situations that come at them.
Yeah, I think that's where, like, for me, with a lot of my, like, the Elite Minds Academy is an academy. It's a little program I do for employees. Well, employers can purchase it for their employees. It's little master classes and stuff that teach all the gamut: emotional intelligence, mental resilience. We have some sound bath stuff. There's hypnotherapy, all kinds of things in there. It's being built out even better. Like, my ultimate goal is having this feelings wheel inside and it giving a resource. But I believe that if your person or a human has the right mental resilience and the right emotional intelligence, they can differentiate the emotions.
And so explain to me what that means. Emotional intelligence. It means you're real smart or you're real smart at knowing what you're feeling.
Well, emotional intelligence, now it just means that you're very in tune with your own emotions so that you can control them. So it brings awareness to what you're feeling and why you're feeling it so that you can react appropriately. And it also means that you have awareness to other people's emotions. So it can keep you from, acting out real fast in anger. When if you sit for a moment and you evaluate maybe why someone's feeling that way or why you have this feeling, you're like, "Oh, okay, well, it's really not that serious." So
Mm,
it's just bringing that all around intelligence to, feeling people and feeling and knowing yourself and being able to gauge the reactions. And very successful people actually have a higher emotional intelligence and EQ versus IQ.
yeah.
You'll get further, you'll be more successful, and just people like you.
Well, it's important because it's like, like reading the room. It's like,
Mhm.
observing and then seeing and realizing what you're observing and reacting to that, even though, you're supposed to be doing this. I think it's a lot of being really, just like you said before, present with people, just being there and observing what you're seeing and understanding what that means.
Yeah, and if you can build up your mental resilience and your mental toughness, if somebody does something where, someone that has a weaker mind or less emotional intelligence might think they're being bullied or picked
Mm,
on or whatever, they can handle it and take it differently. They're like, I have such self confidence and self worth that I know you're just talking shit. Like, it
yeah,
doesn't bother me.
yeah.
That's where we need to be with our kids, building up that confidence, building up that self worth, teaching them to ask, teaching them to listen. I want my daughters to, like, I tell them, I'm like, hey, you don't have, I'll hear the girls talk about what's happening in school. And they're so funny as if I'm not in the driver's seat. I'm still here.
But pretend like I'm not so I can just keep listening.
I typically don't say anything. I'm just like,
Yeah.
keep talking, drive around the block. I want to hear the whole story.
Yep, yep. That's
And
why I was always carpool mom. I'm like, this is the only way I know what's going on is these like drives where they think I'm not here and I'm listening to
isn't
everything.
that funny? Like, why? I'll put 6 little girls in the back seat and they're like, "Oh, crush and crush." And I'm like, I don't think they want me to know this.
But yet they're just going.
So I learn a lot. And from that,
Yes.
I have been really working hard. My girls are so different. One is class president. She's just like, I'm going to be me and I don't care and I'm amazing. And, she's liked by everybody. Hannah's very reserved, very quiet. If I try to make her go order her own food, get up and go to she'll cry. It's like, I don't want to go talk to the person. So I am working
And
on
for you,
that.
it's fascinating because they're twins, literally
Oh
same
my God.
DNA.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a whole nother little story, but
Yeah.
I can tell you in a second. But I tell the girls for picking their tribe, you don't have to be friends with everybody. You can pick your people, be you, your people will find you. And if you see one group and you're not resonating and you realize they're just not your people, you know, you're just not feeling your best or you are happy, it's okay. You don't need to be an asshole, but you can just be like, hey, I mean, we're not on the same page. I
Yeah.
don't feel like hanging out. No offense. They need to learn to speak up in a nice, kind way.
That's so hard, especially for that age group, that demographic where all you want to do is fit in and the peer pressure and the hormones and all that kind of stuff. Like if you're able to do that with your girls, kudos, because I watched my girl just go through, and I almost used the word trauma. I just watched her go through hell with all these little judgmental girl groups and cliques and just, oh man, it was brutal to watch her go through this stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the girls are going to be entering junior high and stuff. So it's just the mean girl groups. But Jesus Christ, if we talk mean girl groups, I was just chatting with my friend today. I'm not going to say what group, but I am on the board of a couple different groups. I'll just say one. They're usually women groups. But even high-level executive women have mean girl clubs.
Really?
Oh my God. I thought, what in the hell is like, I told my girlfriend today, I go, are you kidding me? Like some of these people are running multi-million-dollar companies. It perplexes me because it makes me think, how did you run that company? How did you build that company and you're this mean human? Like you run this little mean girl clique and you
how do you get people to follow you? How do you lead like that? I mean, we see it all the time, like, your dictator type of leaders, but still, you don't expect that from women, or I don't expect that, but
yeah, I am going through it. Me and one of the other board members were higher up on the board, I should say. So we have to deal with the stuff. And it's like, you don't want to think about having to fire a 50-year-old woman from a volunteer position because he's just toxic. Here I am.
I would love to hear that conversation.
I'm like,
the mean girl in me wants to hear that conversation.
As the leader, you have to be very, you have to be very, so
correct. You have to be very politically correct in how you present everything. And
so on the phone, we're both like, so how do we do this? Well, you go. No, you go. No, you go. I'll follow your lead. It's like, I don't know what the hell.
Man. And she's probably never been fired from anything in her life. So it's going to be like, what?
It's a volunteer position too. You're like, I don't know. I'm sorry. We love you, but not anymore.
Yeah. Oh,
we don't need your free help.
Yeah. Okay. So you've just proven that it not always just age. It can continue on throughout our entire lives.
Absolutely. So you always happen to build it for sure. And leadership skills are a must. So it's fun though, because I'm learning all of these things that I need to show my girls that, thank God, my oldest daughter came out. Sometimes I look and I'm like, I don't know who raised you, honey, but she did good. Because, with the twins, it seems like it's just a lot, but I guess they are in this whole social media thing. Not that my girls have it, but you still like see it, hear it. Kids can still access things. Other kids have it. It's out there. You're not keeping your kid off Facebook. You can at home, but you're not when they're not in front of you. So you just have to teach them to know what's right.
Yeah.
But back to the personality thing, I've always been fortunate that and how I treat and punish my children, I've always kind of just instinctively done it by personality. I've never been one that's like, everybody gets grounded for this or everybody gets a spanking. My dad was that way. Very, okay, line up. I don't know who did it, but you're all getting 7 swats and grab your ankles. And you're like, oh my God, that's Dad. That wasn't me. But so I definitely parents, but man, when the twins were born, I was like, absolutely solidified the fact that children are born with a personality. You're not going to change it. You just have to teach them how to work with it, and you
Mhm.
have to learn how to parent it. Because, right, the twins, it was the same pregnancy. So there wasn't like one was more stressed than the other pregnancy, because that matters. It was the same household, same income, same, nothing changed, same sex.
Yep. Yep.
And they're so different.
It's
So,
crazy. And it's
yeah.
crazy to see that, because you're so right. Everybody comes in with their own personalities, depending on, religious beliefs, their own baggage, like whatever it is, everybody comes in differently. You can raise them all exactly the same and they are totally different people. It's fascinating.
I agree. Yeah. Watching all the kids. I mean, I have 5. I'm lucky I get to watch a basketball team change.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny. I always say, like with my daughter, we're very similar in certain rebellious ways, but also she's a little different than me. She's a little more sensitive. She's a little more girly. She's not as tough as her mom, And so to parent somebody who's not like you, I just was like, I'm not equipped. Like, I don't know. What do I do? How do I deal with this? Like, what do people do with people like this? It's
Yeah.
totally different.
That was me with my oldest daughter. She's very, hair, makeup, cutesy dresses, da 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 da. And I never really spanked the kids. I mean, I would. I'm not opposed to spanking. It's just, you do what you need to do. But it's so funny because even to this day, she's 28. If I raise my voice and I'm really upset and I raise my voice, not even at her, she'll cry. And I look at her like, why are you crying? She's like, I don't know. And she'll just cry.
Yes. Yes. Mine gets extremely triggered when I yell. Like, it's like I've learned I cannot, because then we just go into a very bad spiral. Like, I cannot raise my voice at all, because it's just all bad after that.
And I'm like, and then I get frustrated because I'm like, why the fuck are you crying? Like, I never even, like, I didn't do that to you. And I don't know. I mean, maybe I did yell a lot. I know if I think back, it wasn't me directed at her, but her dad and I, it was a very physically abusive relationship. We even physically fought while I was pregnant. So it's probably a lot of that, possibly. I don't know. So just now it's kind of a joke between us. I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ.
We haven't got there yet. we're not there yet.
Yeah. Well, she can go home. She's like, I'm leaving. I'm going home. But yeah, it's fun. I do love being a mom. It's just God, I don't know. It's forever a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and now you're in that awesome, cool time where you get to be grandma, which is spoil the crap out of the kid, give him back to the mom, baby. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so fun. I was just telling the girls in my sound meditation class that having that, once you become a grandma, it's almost like, oh, I'm somebody, right? I just don't know why, but it's like I felt like very matriarchal and like I'm building a legacy. Look at it grow. It might sound weird, but and I very much want to keep that connection. I make sure I get her once a week. I have her every Sunday. I try to see her more if I can. Of course, it would take her anytime. But yeah, I just definitely want that. And I love the fact that I don't know who just said this. I watched it in a show or I heard a podcast. I don't know, but it was a fantastic analogy where successes don't matter, because when you look at things like my grandbaby, when she comes over, the second she sees me, I can be in like holy pajamas, smelly ass breath, glasses on, hair in a bun, all she does not care. As soon as she knows it's grandma, she lights up like no tomorrow. She does not care if I make $1 or $1 million. She's like, that's my people. That's my grandma. And so to have people, and we have friends that are like that, right? So to have people like that in your life just puts things into a better perspective on what kind of human do you want to be in the world. And I just love that. My kids, they'll be happy to see me too, but smell like grandma.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it makes me think about, and I've felt very fortunate in the last few years, like you said, finding your tribe, finding your people that you are like-minded about. I think when we get into groups that it can become very high schooly. It can become like these things, and we think like we need to stay there. We think we like owe it to be in these things, and we don't like recognize the toxicity, and it can eat away at your soul when you're surrounded by people that don't want the best things for you or don't care or aren't mindful of things that are hurtful said or done. Like, I know I went through that. And I remember at one point, I'm like, Jesus, at my age, like, what am I in high school? Like, why am I going through this? This is crazy right now. And yet I stayed in it thinking like there was something wrong with me. And it's
Yeah.
not until, I got some distance and then got around really good groups and like-minded people that none of that existed anymore. And I was like, oh man, I can be friends with women. I can have, high achieving people that I'm around that want the best for me, that think the best for me. And what a difference that makes.
Right. I learned that also with a group of friends. They're not bad to me at all. They're supportive, they're good, but when you can feel the energy, it's
Yeah.
just kind of not the same. And when you get around them, you just feel like drained and this and that. So um I learned with that. I'm like, I am allowed to pick who I'm gonna, spend my time and energy with. Now, my husband loves the group, so I know when we need to do things, I pick which things I'm going to do, depending on, how much interaction I have to have.
Yeah.
And I'm ready. I just prepare myself for it. But I think it's important because there are so many people in the world. There's so many people to meet and know. And when you have your tribe and and the energy is good and the positivity is good and you can give each other honest feedback and you can fully trust them, that's who you spend your time with. Like, we
Right.
don't need 80 friends that drain us. Nobody has time for that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's been one amazing shift that I've seen from the pandemic with everything going virtual and online is you now have access to these kinds of groups and people. Whereas before, maybe you had to travel 5
Mm,
states to go see them or try to find them in these different groups or masterminds. Everything became so much more accessible that I think it made it easier to dabble. Is this my group? Is this my group? Is this? Oh, I like this one. I'm going to stay here. It
yeah.
gave so much more accessibility to really help find your people.
Oh, I agree. And I use that same, I think I was about 45 when I decided to clean house. And that included family. When you were toxic and just didn't have anything positive to offer me, I don't need to interact with you.
Yeah.
I don't
Do
have
you
to be mean, but I just don't need to spend my energy over there.
Yeah. Do you think that stems from like the emotional intelligence, like we talk about, where you're aware of how certain situations and people and energies make you feel, and then having the courage to say it's not for me?
Yeah, I do believe so. Because before, like you said, you're leading with almost a responsibility or an
Yes.
obligation. Like,
Yeah.
you're obligated to do this. No, no, you don't. You don't need to be a jerk, but you don't have to. And when I think now, 5 kids, 3 are spread out different homes, now a grandchild, twins that are doing different things, activities. I don't have a whole lot of hours, but I also don't want to be the person that's too busy for the ones I really, truly, genuinely need and that need me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make space for that. And I want my holidays to be happy. I don't want to have to go into the holiday season and Christmas thinking, oh, I can't say the word. I don't know. Oh, crap. Uncle Larry's coming and he's going to try to, grope all the women and say rude shit. And I don't know. I don't have one of those, but
But every family does. No, I'm kidding.
I did. He passed away. But, I mean, you understand, right?
Of
So
course.
why do we have to do that? You're not obligated.
Right.
I've always, I think partially too was not so much the emotional intelligence, but it was gaining my own confidence, which gave me courage.
Yep.
Because even as a teenager, my mom was 14 when she had my brother and 16 when she had me. So you can only imagine growing up was not always the best. She didn't always make the best choices.
God, she was a baby herself. My God.
Right?
Wow.
She did the best she could
Sure.
for what she had, where she had, all of that. I get it.
Yeah.
But what I learned early on, and I used to kind of make that stance, and maybe that's why we would butt heads a lot. But I always said, even as a kid, hey, just because you're my parent, I wasn't born having to respect you. You still have to treat me like a proper human. Like,
Mm,
you can be my mom, but I deserve respect as a human being. You don't get to just do whatever you want and treat me however you want. And I am obligated to love you and connect with you and be your daughter. No,
mhm.
I don't. I don't. And I don't speak to my mother. I don't hate her. If she were to send me a text, I would nicely answer. On occasion, I'll shoot her a pic of the kids or something, but I don't have to anymore. She's
Yeah.
my mom, I get it, but you have to earn it. You can't just treat me like shit all the time and expect that, okay, mom, whatever, mom. Oh, sure, come over, spend the weekend. Let me feel like my life is discombobulated for a week because you're here creating chaos. That's
Yeah.
ridiculous. And especially as a mom, because then that just wears down to my children, and that's absolutely not fair.
Right, and you don't want them to see
Nope.
this and say that's okay and that's acceptable, because you would never want that for them to have that in their lives and think it was okay.
Yeah. And it took me a little bit to be happy with it. I had my aunt constantly, well, that's your mother. I'm like, then she should act like a good one, was kind of my response. But I get
Yeah.
it. We all have a certain space, and I have learned to understand that about her. So I don't hate her. I don't anything. I would do what I needed to do for her, but I don't have to bring it into my life to infiltrate even an hour of that toxicity.
Well, and it would be the hope that maybe there's some awareness there that, like, I want a relationship with my daughter. What do I need to do? Let me take steps to handle these things that she absolutely, says I do, or whatever, just means of making steps to improve one's condition to be a part of your life. You would hope that that would lead to that.
And I feel like when that happens, and not to spill a bunch of beans, but personalities changed. My mom went down a route where she could probably use you, if we could say
Yes.
that. So
Understood.
I can't have that. I just can't.
Not
And
around
I
your
think
kids,
when
no
we're
way.
strong
Yeah.
enough to acknowledge that, it's so powerful. It just makes us such better people, and we can be better for others, whether you're a mom or not a mom. It just can make you better, and you can thrive so much more. Well, releasing any kind of toxicity in any way is can make you a better human.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary. So many people just wanna stay in this uncomfortable hell as opposed to taking the step to cut out something where they could potentially be better. I mean, I see people
Mhm.
stay in it all the time, addiction, bad relationships, bad jobs, like, they'd rather just stay in that uncomfortable hell than to make those moves.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If we could only do some things to change the world, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're both working on that. I think we're both
I'm
doing
just
what
gonna
we can
blow
to
out
bring
confidence
awareness.
to you people. Just like take it, have some courage.
Yeah.
It'll
Well,
be
and that's what it
okay.
is, 'cause, and so often, and, you probably hear this too, "Oh, I wish I could," or "I want to, but," and it's like, "Okay, but what? Just do
But
it
what?
then." Like, why? Why
Mhm.
live in that what if, and I should, and I know I should, but I'm still not gonna do it, and it's interesting to see the restrictions that people will put on themselves and leave themselves in bad situations.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things NLP through my whole training, I was there, it was like 30 plus days, 10-hour days I was there. And
Wow.
one of the big sayings is when someone says something like, well, I can't do that. And the first response is, well, when did you decide that? You're like, what? When? Oh, I get to decide, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you say, oh, I wish I could, well, you can. You just need to make
Yeah.
a move. Even if it's little, make a move.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just
It seems super simple, but
I know. And, part of it too, I think working around a lot more suicide and stuff and seeing that and seeing how how it's such a final decision.
Yeah.
And when you look at the person that did it and the situation, you're like, are you kidding me? Like all they had to do was make one phone call, or
Yeah.
all they had to do was move to another city. I don't know. I mean, it is sometimes it's very simple stuff. I get sometimes it's far more complex, but there isn't anything we can't get through except death, right? I
Right.
mean, so I think with that has kind of made me pick and choose the things the things I'm gonna do and put up with.
Yeah. So with that, I've heard from people who've attempted it seriously and survived. And one thing that seems to be a common thread is a lot of them are like, as soon as the motion was going forward, I
Mhm.
wished I could take it back. That
Right.
seems to be like the common thread. Like as soon as I initiated it, I knew it was wrong and I wished I could take it back.
Yep. That's exactly it. The second they jump, they're like, holy crap, why? The second they pull the trigger, that's why the gun is, more lethal, because as soon as you pull the trigger, you probably won't survive that. But
Right.
taking the pills, they can quickly call for help or whatever they need to do. So
Yeah.
um, I do agree. I haven't come across anyone that's like, darn it, try
Yeah.
that tomorrow. Right. So,
Yeah. Yeah, well, and it's unfortunate, that, like you said, in a lot of those means they can't take it back. It
mhm,
is done. Done is done.
yeah.
Yeah. Super sad too to hear how young, kids are doing it. I mean, do you feel like that's a product of COVID or just society with social media, video games? Like, is there a common thread
Mm.
with that?
You know, I don't think so much. I don't even think it's COVID so much, because the numbers at 10 they were tracking pre-COVID as well. They
Yeah.
got higher, of course, but I haven't seen a whole lot of like exact research as to why. My thought on that is um there's a lot less talk about things like this because, well, I should rephrase that. I think there's not enough proper talk about
Mm,
things like this. I also think things can be a fad. I do know that contagion is huge. So if a good role model, a movie star, because you'll notice if a movie star or somebody very popular in a high school, it creates a little contagion around it that others will go, oh my God, well, if Robin Williams did it, he was so amazing and great. So if it's okay with him, then I'm gonna do that because it's okay.
yeah.
So there's a little of that. And because we have the type of instantaneous news and releases and things like that, I think that people are more aware of it being out there. And I just think the way things are put out, I guess I'll just say it like this. I don't want to say it wrong or weird, but the kids in school, fourth grade, they had a suicide prevention program come through. It was taught wrong. It was taught in a terrible way where most of the kids from the moms I spoke with, the kids came home going, oh my God, I'm so depressed. I need a therapist and meds, because they weren't taught that it's okay to have emotion. It's okay to
Mhm.
have these emotions. It's okay to have these feelings, and it's okay to sit in them, and it's okay to have a reaction to them. It's just how you react to them, and it's expressing them. It's having the emotions and having these things and having these problems and not expressing them or having help or getting the having the ability to have someone to talk to. I remember watching this YouTube of this one dad. You can look it up when I'm done or I'll send it to you. But um, he worked from home. This was pre COVID. He worked from home. He goes around speaking about it now. His teenage son kept coming to his office and he's like, in a minute, yeah, okay, I'm on the phone. But then dad wouldn't go follow up. He'd finish the phone call, forget the son came in, wouldn't go follow up. It went on for days. The kid ultimately killed himself, left
Oh,
his dad a letter and said, Dad, basically explained all what I've been trying. You didn't have time. I want you to now go spread the message so that this doesn't happen to another kid. So I think it's just things like that. We don't have to so much teach our kids about all the emotions being bad. We want to teach them that if you're feeling emotion, come talk to somebody. Ask, hey, I'm feeling this way. Just even if it's talking to a friend or whatever. I think it's more that, not having shame around the emotion. I think that's part of the problem.
yeah. Well, and realizing that emotion is normal or can be, and it's
Mhm.
okay. Like you're not weird, you're not oddball, you're not extreme traumatic, it's okay. It's life. We have emotions, we have feelings, we have shoot at that age hormones that are over taking all common sense and reason, and
Yeah.
it could just be a side effect of that, or perhaps it's all that bad food you're eating, all that
I was
sugar and
thinking the same.
chemicals from the
Mhm.
sodas and the colors and the dyes and all the shit that contributes to not feeling good
Yeah.
and mentally not doing good and brain fog and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that when you mentioned, yeah, the chemicals and stuff, because think about it. Our kids, compared to me as growing up 70s, 80s, I don't think half of the food that's around that you can get existed. My
Yeah.
mom was always making something.
Yep.
Granted, we had like sliced cheese and stuff, but for the most part, everything was in a 2-minute microwave and you're set. Oh, hell, I was 8 when we got a microwave. So I remember that. It was as
Oh
big as
yeah.
a
That was
TV.
big news. That was big deal.
I sat there like hugging it, going,
Yeah.
"Oh my god!" I was watching this like soup heat up or something. It was just fascinating to me.
Yeah,
I was
and it was like
hugging it.
that big. It was like the
Yeah,
size of like the TVs back then. Just imagine the radiation that shit
that's what
set
I was
off.
just gonna say. I was really getting all this radiation. And I'm hugging this
You're right.
microphone.
Like looking in the door, like
It's so magical, and you're like, I don't know
and it
what
literally made that noise too.
I know it did. Oh man, I was just telling that story to the kids the other day, and they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, I was 8 when a microwave. We got one." They're like, "What?"
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, not to get darker or whatever, but I feel like we've seen a lot of cancer, like
Mhm.
our parents and that. And I really strongly believe a lot of it stemmed from all the microwaves. I
Well,
really do.
yeah, a lot of things. I mean, shoot, they're talking about it with the cell phones and stuff. So, I mean, there's a lot of stimulus that our kids are getting, and
Sure.
they're not getting those breaks for things, right? Not getting a way to, blow off the steam and run and exercise and stuff. So I think just a lot of that builds up. And when you're eating
Sure.
the toxic foods, having all the sugars, your brain is just on like, fire.
Oh yeah, sugars are big. I mean, for me, although I grew up poor, my mom was like, we didn't have sugar in the house. Like when I went to my grandma, she always had sugar cereal. So I would get the like treat there, but
Yeah.
it was literally a treat. It wasn't the norm, like fruit snacks and shit like that. It was not the norm. It was
Yeah.
like the nasty stuff I hated, but I'm grateful for that now because I realize it's so much healthier than the stuff that's considered normal these days.
Right. Yeah. I mean, think about it. You're looking at fruit snacks. You're like, oh, 15% real fruit. Sweet. I'll give them
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. Great. There they are.
Yeah. I'm in a hurry. Eat that while we're driving to soccer. So I
Yeah.
totally get it. And I'm guilty of that stuff too. But
Sure.
we're really trying to be better because we do see, the sugar addiction and, things like that with the kids. So,
Yeah, and the emotions and how it affects them
mhm,
and the things that they go through, when we have a lot more knowledge now as well, just
right.
with our access to the internet and doctors and shows, like we have so much more knowledge now that it's almost our responsibility to sort of talk about it because that didn't really exist back
Yeah.
then when we were growing up. That wasn't like, it isn't like it is now.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting? Because you almost feel like there's no excuse not to be good.
Yeah.
Health, eating right, exercise. There's no excuse. You want to work out, just find somebody on your phone for 4 minutes and she'll show you what to do. I mean,
Yeah.
there's
Oh,
literally
yeah.
no excuse.
I
And here
know.
we are, obese and depressed. And
Right. So do you think that just feeds the guilt and shame because it is so accessible, or people just like, damn, that's work. I don't really want to do the work.
I think it's a little of both. I mean, if
Yeah.
I think from me personally, yeah, there's a lot of, I'm a little bit in a space where I probably shouldn't be with my weight, but fortunately, it's not terrible. But yeah, I mean, there's a bit where I know better. There's things I should do, but sometimes you just make choices and then yeah, guilt because you're like, damn it, that would have been so easy. I should have went on that hike with my husband,
Yep.
instead of checking the emails
Yep.
or walk and check the emails if that's what you need to do. Yeah, I mean, definitely getting better. And that goes along with the people I'm surrounding myself with. I'm with the people that I'm surrounding myself with. I notice my habits change. I start to develop better habits because, for one, I want to have something to talk about too. When they're all talking about, I ran this 10K, and then I'm like, what?
I walked around my neighborhood for a block.
You're like, I want a minute, the little fit in. But yeah, I mean, it's just important. And we want to live longer and stuff. But
Yes.
yeah, guilt and shame is huge. People carry that around from hell. I had to release some guilt and shame around stuff I did early on as a mom that I just didn't know better.
Yeah.
Um, but you just do. And if you can learn how to do those things, I use time techniques and walk myself through it. Subconsciously, I release the negative emotion, and that's fear is one of them, and guilt falls under, that one right there. So
Do you do that at the moment it comes up, or do you randomly just sit there and go, okay, what am I going to clear?
I try to do it monthly, all of them.
Okay.
Anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt. If you clear those 5, it almost covers like worry and this. It kind of covers a lot of the underlying ones. So I recorded myself walking through subconsciously, so then I don't have to talk to myself, and I can just listen and walk myself through it. It's basically equivalent to just cleaning that dryer lint screen between loads. You need to. It's going to get too full. And I have noticed that it makes a significant difference for me, because whatever I've got going on, and if I did have something serious that probably happened right then, sure, I could go right in and be like, I'm terrified. I'm going to work on this. Fortunately, I haven't had anything crazy in the last year or two. So I just regularly, do it. And that's one thing I'm getting ready to do, where I'm very excited for with my sound healing, is I'm going to incorporate the sound healing with releasing of the negative emotions, and do some workshops for some ladies around here. I'm just super excited about that.
I think that's really beneficial. And there's a lot of power in doing it as a group. I mean, obviously, one-on-one sessions are amazing too. You have like that space and freedom to be vulnerable. But I think there's a lot of healing in the group, a lot of power in that.
Yeah, I agree.
Love that. So, for our listeners that want to follow up with you or find you or subscribe to any of the amazing things that you're doing, where do they find you?
I think the easiest way is Suzi Freeman, SuziFreeman.com. I'm Suzi Freeman on Instagram. It's SuziFreeman.com. And that'll get you anywhere. Heck, my kids, it's funny, I'll tell you real quick. My kids think I'm famous because my SEO is so good. You Google my name and I'm like the top 10. They're like, my daughter said the other day, she goes, one day we're going to walk in Barnes and Noble and there's going to be a book, Suzi Freeman Inspires, because you're so famous. I'm like, okay.
That's so good.
My husband, they're like, Daddy, we Googled you and it's nowhere. And he's like, that's good.
Oh man, enjoy that, because then you get kids my age who are like, oh God, another article, whatever, mom. Like, just so irritated by everything I do.
How old is she right now?
My daughter's 23. My son's 20.
God.
So he's in that, like, whatever, mom. They're unimpressed by anything I do.
Oh, they'll get there.
Yeah, it's
so
fine.
fun.
Luckily, I don't do it to seek their approval. So
right. Yeah. You know what? Secretly, they're loving it. They're like, my mom. Really? They are. My mom was the same. She had lots of herself in magazines and stuff before things went crazy. She was a highly sought after CFO here in Phoenix.
Oh, wow. My
mom's very intelligent and huge companies with, and she's on magazine covers and this and that. She was in the construction industry, and I'm very proud of her for that stuff. I love that. I think it's amazing. My mom was a very young mom. Well, for any woman or any human, right? I love it when all people are accomplished, but she just did what she needed to do. So I'm super proud of that. And your kids, they'll get there. They'll be like, hey, that's my mom.
Yeah. And like you said, there's probably a point where they recognize it. They just don't want to admit it. So
right now they're just in too deep. It's like one of those where you've been like pushed back, and now you don't know how to be like, hey, here I am. Totally. They're like, I don't know what to say now. I've been.
Yeah, they're like my little Jiminy Cricket. And my son was like, it's my duty to tell you, Mom. Who do you think would tell you? It's not going to be your employees or your friends. So it's my obligation to tell you what you're doing wrong.
Oh,
like, really?
Thanks. I appreciate that. Oh, so I asked my kids, my big kids, I'm like, hey, Kobe, I want to do this like parenting little workshop thing. Can you give me some advice? Like, what do you wish I did different? He's like, not buying into that shit. No. I'll think on it.
Yeah.
In 3
I'll
months.
get back to you.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
But
thank
again,
you.
once again, showing how different all of them are, how they all go through phases, how we go through phases where that used to mean something. Now I'm like,
Yeah,
whatever. It's fine.
I know. I love kids. Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. They're good little mirrors.
Ooh, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. You've been amazing. I feel like we could talk forever.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. And yeah, let's connect. I think you have, oh, April, we can time out it. You have a podcast as well. Is that right?
I